Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Buhari and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC Podcast. I'm PBC's Kenneth Buhari.
I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. This week, we've got freshly crowned WBO World 154-pound champion Brian Carlos Castano joining us. We're also going to take a look at the return of AB, Adrien Broner, Saturday night, PBC on Showtime. A look back at last week as well. And of course, Mike and I will go toe-to-toe. As you can see, as you can hear, this is no doubt a packed episode. So let's jump right into the PBC Fight of the Week. This Saturday, February 20th, it's the return of AB. Adrien Broner is back in a 12-round super lightweight battle versus Jovanie Santiago live on Showtime. The telecast begins at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're going to begin with the essentials.
Okay, once again, here we go. Broner's 33-4-1 with 24 knockouts. Santiago 14-0-1 with 10 knockouts. Broner is 2-2-1 in his last 5 with 1 KO. Santiago 5-0, 3 KOs. Broner's last fight was against Pacquiao, January of 2019, meaning he'll be out of the ring for more than 2 years. Santiago stopped Juan Zegara in 1 round this past December. Broner has a 62% knockout ratio, Santiago 67. Broner, a lot of experience, 235 rounds. Santiago, only 62 rounds. Broner, they're both 31. Broner turned pro in 2008, Santiago 2007. Both fight from an orthodox stance. Broner is 5'6", Santiago 5'7". Broner has a 69-inch reach, 70 inches for Santiago. Broner is from Cincinnati, Ohio, and Santiago is from Dorado, Puerto Rico.
Now, we've seen Broner on social media lately. He looks like he's in fantastic condition. Says he's cut out drinking and other bad habits. At 31, can Adrien Broner still fulfill the promise many foresaw?
Well, I think you can argue that he already has fulfilled his promise. I mean, the guy's won titles in 4 divisions. You could argue he's a Hall of Famer right now. I think people tend to forget that because of all the stuff that's happened, all the stuff he says, being a showman, et cetera, et cetera. He's beaten guys like Daniel Ponce de Leon, Jason Litzau, Eloy Perez, Vicente Escobedo, Antonio DeMarco, Paulie Malignaggi. Broner's problem is that he did all that when he was very young. He hasn't got much accomplished the past 7+ years, believe it or not, although he did win a 140-pound title during that period. I think the question is now is can he still be an elite fighter? He's 0-2-1 in his last 3 fights, but those losses came against Mikey Garcia and Manny Pacquiao. There's really no shame there.
Right.
And now he's had 2 years to think about what went wrong. He's only 31 and hasn't taken any bad beatings, I don't think, or anything like that. If he's focused, if he puts in the work, I think he can still be a good fighter, especially below 147, which I think is too big for him. We know he's a talented guy. We know he's tough. He's tougher than most guys or a lot of guys. He just needs to have his mind in the right place.
Do you believe he has his mind in the right place? Do you think, when you see what you see on social media, when you hear what he's saying, do you believe he has, in fact, turned over a new leaf?
Sorry to put it this way, but this was my gut reaction when I first started thinking about this question. Who the hell knows? He told me, I interviewed him last week. He told me that he missed the sport, which is a good sign. That's one of the reasons that he says he came back. I suspect after talking to him and reading about him that he understands that his career won't last forever. Now, he's not old. He's only 31, but I think at that age you start to think, well, this isn't going to go on forever. If he wants to get more accomplished, if he wants to make good money, which is obviously his primary motivation, I think he knows that he has to do it right now. I can't say that with any degree of certainty. It's just sort of a feeling that I have. We'll get a better idea of his mindset, I think, on Saturday. I'll add one more thing. I wouldn't read too much into the outlandish things that he says and does. That's just the showman in him. That's just AB being AB. Right. I don't think you can necessarily connect that to his commitment to boxing.
Yeah. Now, what about his opponent, Jovanie Santiago? It's interesting when you going through the essentials, he's got quite a few advantages. What can you tell us about him?
Well, probably like most people, I haven't seen too much of him, but what I've seen, on YouTube, he looks like a capable boxer with heavy hands. I noticed the heavy hands. He's a stalker, aggressive guy. He's constantly in attack mode, but he's not wild or anything like that. It's sort of a controlled, methodical aggression. And I like his body work. He targets the body a lot, and he does damage there. In his last bout, he stopped, as I mentioned, he stopped Juan Zegara in the first round with just a brutal left hook to the body. I think this guy's a pretty good fighter. I don't think he's a pushover.
That's good. I like it. Which means what? You're going with the upset, or?
No, that doesn't mean that at all. Broner's a counterpuncher, right? And the best opponent for a counterpuncher is a guy who comes directly toward them. That's Santiago. I don't think Santiago will be overwhelmed, at least not early in the fight, but I think he's going to take a lot of shots coming in, and it's going to be more and more shots as the fight progresses. I think he's going to get worn down, ultimately broken down. I'm going to go with Broner by a late knockout.
Yeah, so am I. I like Broner by 9th round TKO. I think he's going to start slow, given the ring rust, but once he warms up, I expect him to take over and let his hands go. He still has elite skills, and I expect to see at least flashes of that on Saturday night as he works his way back into title contention. Now, the co-feature could steal the show, and that's saying something given who is in the main event. A battle of heavyweight contenders, both hungry for another world title shot. Dominic Breazeale versus Welterweight. Mike, on paper, who should be the favorite?
That's a good question, which is sort of how it's supposed to be, right? I want to say that Wallin should be better on paper because of his recent success. He came out of relative obscurity, I guess you can say, to give Tyson Fury problems in September 2019, although Tyson Fury did fight with a gruesome cut, most of the fight. And I thought Wallin looked good in his knockout victory over Travis Kaufman this past August.
He did.
He's a pretty good boxer. He's a good athlete. I think he's got some power. He's a good heavyweight. All that said, Breazeale is right there with him, or certainly not that far behind him. He might not be the boxer that Wallin is, but he's a decent boxer, and he's a bigger guy, and he has much more power, I think, than Wallin. Breazeale is a big-time heavyweight power puncher.
Well, you just led me to my next question. Style-wise, how do you see the fight playing out?
Well, again, Wallin's the boxer. Breazeale's the kind of guy who looks to land big punches. I think Wallin outboxes Breazeale and most likely wins the decision if he can avoid those big shots for 12 rounds. That's a big if, though. Again, Breazeale I think he boxes well enough to land those shots against most guys. He just couldn't land them in his title fights against Joshua and Wilder. I think it's an interesting style matchup. I really like this fight. I think it's going to be just a fun fight to watch.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you talk about the style matchup. We've talked about who should be the favorite on paper. I mean, the fact that we have to ask that question, as you alluded to, I mean, that tells you all you need to know about this fight. And this was the hardest one to predict. I assume it was the same for you.
Yeah, this is essentially a 50-50 fight, I think. Maybe 51-49. I think Wallin boxes well enough and is clever enough to diffuse whatever Breazeale brings in the end, although it's not going to be easy. And as a matter of fact, I won't be surprised if Breazeale hurts him and takes him out at some point. But my prediction is that Wallin is clever enough, good enough to win a unanimous decision.
Well, we're on the same page for both of these fights then. I'm going with Welterweight to win a 12-round unanimous decision. I believe Breazeale is going to make him fight. And I expect Wallin to surprise a few people. He's not a bad inside fighter. And while he isn't heavy-handed, he did hurt Tyson Fury in that last round of the fight. So, hey, you never know.
He's a heavyweight.
He is a heavyweight, and they all can punch. I expect this to have some really, really good moments. I'm looking forward to it. Now, in the televised opener, which starts at 9 p.m. Eastern time, Robert Easter Jr., the former world lightweight champion, will take on Ryan Martin. That should be a fun 140-pound title affair. Definitely looking forward to this triple header. But now it's time to bring in our guest this week. He is a two-time world champion. Just won the WBO World 154-pound title last Saturday with an impressive 12-round unanimous decision over the incumbent, Patrick Teixeira. The new champion, Brian Castano. Congratulations on your world title victory. How did you feel when they announced you the winner and gave you that belt?
La verdad que gracias, estoy muy contento. Fue una pelea dura, una gran pelea y nada, estamos trabajando y ahora esperando a unificar, ¿no? Con los 3 cinturones que tiene Charlo.
Sorry. Actually, it's a really great feeling. I'm so happy, but now it's time to turn the page. The goal is to unify all the belts, the 3 belts that the Charlos have in their power, and go from there. But it was truly a great feeling.
You're now a 2-time world champion. At what point you had the WBA 154-pound title? Does this feel any different from when you first won a world title?
La verdad que siempre uno que sale campeón mundial, o sea, no es algo, ¿cómo te puedo explicar? La adrenalina y la emoción del momento son diferentes, ¿no? Porque la primera vez es algo que uno, es como una descarga, sacarse un peso de encima y decir, bueno, lo logré. Y consagrarse una segunda vez campeón mundial es algo que decir, wow, todavía estoy en proceso, lo estoy procesando, aunque ya vengo de hace tiempo mentalizado que quiero ser el campeón discutido de las 154 libras, pero realmente es increíble.
Well, let me tell you this: the adrenaline, the sheer excitement of being a world champion, it doesn't compare to anything. Really, it's something that I am still in disbelief that I was able to experience. Now, having said that, wanting to be a world champion for the second time, wow, that is just an amazing achievement to strive for, and my mentality, my effort is all set on that. My goal is to unify every single title out there and to be the undisputed world champion at the 154-pound division.
We're definitely going to get into the unification, but let's talk about the fight for just a minute. Did the fight on Saturday go as you expected?
La verdad que fue muy dura. Más allá de que llevé todo el tiempo la pelea yo esperaba ganar y ganar así en ese margen, metiendo presión y conectando golpes y esperando a que en algún momento se caiga o algo, pero no, realmente lo respeto a Teixeira, que es un guerrero, un gran peleador y le he conectado mano que era como para caerse y se quedó en pie y siguió luchando. La verdad que fue una gran pelea y realmente esperaba una guerra, así que ahí así lo fue.
It was a tough bout, not unexpected though. I absolutely was coming in expecting a war, and that's what it was. All my respect for Teixeira, really. I landed some punches where I expect him to kiss the mat, and he didn't. He stayed on his feet. So absolutely total respect for him. He was a really tough opponent. I was in control of the fight throughout, and I landed some punches that I was expecting to land. I won in the way I expected, but I am striving to be even better next time around.
One of many things that I notice is that you never seem to run out of energy. How tired were you at the end of the fight? And do you have any fitness secrets you could share with the rest of the world? Because it was just amazing.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Realmente trato de focalizar eso, de tener mucho resto físico por si la pelea se complica y si tengo que salir a tirar. En este caso sabía que tenía todo en contra porque la promotora él era de la promotora local, entonces yo sabía que tenía que hacer un esfuerzo doble, pero siempre me caractericé por eso, por la preparación que hacemos realmente, la preparación física con Matías Servín, que es mi conditional coach, es muy buena y hacemos, siempre corremos montaña, hacemos trabajos en el gimnasio con mi padre, que es mi entrenador, trabajo de sofocación, de resistencia a la velocidad. Entonces esas cosas la trabajamos, realmente la trabajamos mucho y corremos realmente. Hacemos a la vieja, la old school, ¿no? Ir a correr, corremos mucho fondo, mucho sprint y esas cosas, entonces eso es lo que me ayuda a tener el resto que tuve, ¿no?
What can I tell you? I'm old school. It's just a matter of knowing that when push comes to shove and it gets late into the fight, and I need to have extra oomph to be able to come out on top, then that's why my focus is always to be in the best shape possible. I train with my conditioning coach, Matthias Ervin, as well as along with my dad, and we do all kinds of different conditioning exercises where I'm able to make the most out of what my body is able to give me. We run we climb mountains, we run, we do all kinds of different endurance training exercises. We focus on speed. We do a lot of sprinting too. So it's a mindset. Really, my priority is always to be in the best shape possible to be able to fight up until the end.
You fought the champion Patrick Teixeira on his territory, on his promotion, so to speak. You also fought Michel Soro in his country of France. Are you ever worried that maybe you won't get the decision?
Exactamente. Por ese motivo tuve que dejar el cinturón vacante de la 154 del WBA, porque tenía que ir a pelear a la casa de los Zacaries, que son los promotores de Michel Soro. Entonces tuve que decidir, nos sentamos, decidimos, ¿qué hacemos? Vamos, le ganamos, o sea, por un amplio margen y nos van a dar perdida, o sea, tenemos que noquearlo. Y Michel Soro no se cae, es un boxeador de gran nivel, es muy fuerte. Él entrena aquí en Big Bear con Abel Sánchez y es un gran peleador, muy fuerte. Y yo sabía que tenía todo de perder, entonces no quiero que me pase más esas cosas, entonces tratamos siempre de trabajar para ello y en este caso dijimos, bueno, no vamos a Francia, sigamos en Estados Unidos. En algún momento vendrá otra oportunidad por un cinturón y se nos dio.
You hit the nail on the head, really. That's why I left my 154-pound belt vacant. Because as we were contemplating fighting Michel Soro on his turf, in his land, we were thinking, okay, if we're going to fight this guy, we're going to have to knock him out. And he's such a tough fighter that I don't think the odds are that great of me being able to knock him out. So let's not go to France. Let's remain in the United States. And there will be another train coming, another opportunity to win a belt. But it was a consensus decision between me and my people to bypass that opportunity against Soros, so I could look for better opportunities in the future.
You also fought Erislandi Lara to a draw back in 2019. A lot of people thought you won that fight. Why was there no rematch?
Realmente la buscamos la revancha, intentamos por otros medios buscarla, pero sinceramente no quisieron y él intentó buscar por otro lado pelear con otros peleadores más fácil. Ya es como que tenían armado las cosas como para coronarse campeón mundial otra vez. Como sobrevivió a la pelea conmigo, dijeron, bueno, tiene un poco más, vamos a aprovecharlo. Y bueno, lo llevaron despacio, hizo 2 peleas, creo que peleó con el hermano del Canelo, pero anteriormente hizo otra pelea, creo. O creo que peleó directamente con el hermano del Canelo por el título mundial, así de una. Me lo sacaron a mí, tenía que pelear Michel Soro y después, no sé, apareció él, peleó y salió campeón y noqueó en 2-3 rounds. Noqueó, imagínate, así que realmente buscamos la pelea, pero nunca quisieron la revancha ellos.
We looked for the fight. They never wanted the rematch to begin with. After that fight that Lara had with me, I guess if people thought, okay, he survived that fight, let's milk it for all it's worth. So I believe that he fought Canelo's brother for the world title, like, for the title itself, and it was just a matter of us trying to look for them. They even bypassed Soto to begin with, and then they didn't want any part of me. They went for Canelo's brother, and it was just a sham of fight, really. So, but we were able to try at least. They didn't want to, and that was that.
Okay, let's talk about Jermell Charlo. Obviously, that's the fight that you want. Is that the fight you want next? And if so, when do you think that fight could happen?
No, sí. Esa es la pelea. Porque quiero los cinturones que tiene él. Sé que es un gran peleador y creo que el estilo que tiene él, con el estilo que tengo yo, vamos a hacer una gran pelea. Y entonces es lo que quiero hacer, tratar de demostrar. Él es el mejor de las 154 hoy en día. Bueno, yo quiero ser el mejor también. Entonces, para ser el mejor lo tengo que ganar a él. Y ya siendo campeón mundial, tengo esta chance y quiero aprovecharla. Hay que ver si él va a querer pelear conmigo. Capaz me quiere esquivar.
Sorry. Absolutely. Don't get it twisted. He is the opponent I want right now. I want his belt. I want to show that I am the best in the division. And the only way to prove that is to go after him. Now, I don't know if he's going to want to come after me. I believe that our styles, the way that we match up, will provide a great fight for boxing fans everywhere. But it's really up to him. But I want his belt. I want to be the unified champion, and I want to prove that I am the best that there is in the world.
I love it. How big of a challenge is Charlo, and why?
Creo que Charlo es hoy en día el más fuerte, el más pegador de la categoría y es el más completo, ¿no? Es lo único que me puede llegar a complicar es eso, nomás que es un rival fuerte, duro y nada más que eso. Es cuestión de pelear y sentarnos a hablar con el Heyman a ver si quiere hacer la pelea o no, porque realmente yo entiendo que esto es un negocio y tal vez capaz quiera hacer la pelea con otra persona, un boxeador capaz un poco más conocido, pero hoy en día el campeón soy yo, de la OMB, y creo que los dos podemos hacer una gran pelea y yo sé que tengo con qué para ganarle y nada, quiero aprovechar el momento por eso, ¿no? Es un gran peleador, nada más.
The bottom line is that he's a great fighter, tough, the hardest puncher that there is in the division, no doubt about it. But I'm not scared of that in a single bit. That's not something that I am against facing. I want to sit down and make sure that we try anything possible to make this fight happen. I do understand that this is a business and that he may want to go another way, that he may want to fight a better-known fighter, a more famous fighter. But the bottom line is that I am the defending champion in the 154-pound division of the WBO. So my goal is to be able to sit down, get the fight going, and then go from there.
When do you expect to be back in the ring?
¿Cuándo esperas estar de regreso en el ring?
No sé, cuando me digan está la pelea, yo estoy listo. Yo terminé de pelear hace unos días, pero ahora estoy descansando, voy a descansar una semana, only one week, y ahora arranco nuevamente un descanso activo, a correr, a entrenar, a mantenerme, porque sé que en cualquier momento puede llegar a salir la pelea, entonces quiero estar listo. Cuando me diga el Heyman, mira, está la pelea, ¡pum!, listo. Siempre trato de estar listo para los compromisos. No quiero que me agarren descansando de más, ¿no?, en estos momentos, así que nada. Cuando me digan, estoy ready, no hay problema.
Whenever, wherever. I am gonna take a week to recover, to relax now, but then after that, it's gonna be an active recovery. I'm gonna continue to be in shape, I'm going to continue to train, because whenever Heyman says, hey, time for you to step up, then boom, I'm going to be ready to fight right away. I do not want to be caught off guard or out of shape. I am always going to be ready and set for any challenges that come my way.
You're from Argentina, where soccer, football is such a huge sport. How did you get involved in boxing? How old were you?
Creo que verlo boxear a mi papá fue lo que me impulsó en este deporte, ¿no? Mi papá fue boxeador y siempre lo seguía al gimnasio, y yo jugaba a la pelota y iba al gimnasio de boxeo a mirar y a pegar a la bolsa, así, pero inocentemente. Y después fui agarrándole el gusto al boxeo, veía el boxeo y me llamó la atención más el boxeo que el fútbol, y arranqué de chiquito. A los 9 años ya arranqué a entrenar, y a los 11 hice mis primeras peleas, y de ahí hasta ahora que no paré.
I looked up to my dad. He used to be a boxer, and when I was little, I used to play with my friends in the park. We played soccer, and then after we were done with that, I would follow my dad to the gym, innocently, really. But I learned to love boxing from watching him fight, and I started really young, at 9 years old. And then when I was 11, I started competing, and that's how the story began. After that, I realized I was more into boxing than I was into soccer, and we know how that finished.
Who were some of the boxers you admired growing up?
Sí, bueno, the first, my father. Primero mi papá. Después, bueno, empecé a ver boxeo internacional, Sugar Ray Leonard, Muhammad Ali, Tyson. Fueron boxeadores que marcaron al principio, que me hicieron ver boxeo de otra manera. O sea, yo veía y decía, wow. Después Floyd Mayweather, Oscar de la Hoya, Tito Trinidad, Chávez, toda esa la camada de histórica acá del boxeo, Tommy Gea. Mi papá me hacía ver mucho esos boxeos. Y después el boxeo nacional, como Tara Castro, Martín Cosci, Balbi, Vázquez, Monzón, Domínguez, todos boxeadores de acá de Argentina que me hicieron seguir por el amor a este deporte, ¿no?
My dad is everything to me, and he was the first boxer I ever admired. Then he told me to look up to classic boxers like Hearns, and then as I grew into it on my own, I looked up to Sugar Ray Leonard, Muhammad Ali, De La Hoya, Mayweather, boxers that really that defined an era. And then obviously, as far as Argentine boxers go, I looked up to Monzón, Koji, fighters that were national idols, people that went beyond what they were in the ring, that they were pop icons, really. So that's how I came up with boxing and how I fell in love with the sport.
That's great. You had an incredible amateur career. You beat Errol Spence Jr. and Sergey Derevyanchenko, for example. Do you remember those fights?
Yeah. Sí, entendí. Yeah, this is my two great fight in the amateur career, no? Sergey Derevyanchenko is a more strong guy. Es el más fuerte que enfrenté, ¿no? Hasta la fecha. Errol Spence es un boxeador como ahora, ¿no? Es un boxeador táctico, boxea fuerte, pero le gané los dos, y a Errol Spence le gané más todavía. Le metí 2 cuentas de protección y me lo llevé por delante. Creo que me subestimó por ser sudamericano, por ser latino. Creo que él no sé, la vio fácil y lo saqué en la segunda ronda del Panamericano en Venezuela. Y a Sergey Derevyanchenko en la World Series Boxing, creo que fueron las 2 peleas más relevantes del momento, ¿no? que había ganado.
¿En dónde había sido el otro? Spence en el Panamericano, ¿y cuál había sido el otro?
En la World Series Boxing peleamos cuando se hizo en Argentina.
Ah, okay. Solo me estoy asegurando acá de que lo digo bien. Okay, perfect. Okay, so they both are good fighters, but you know what? Errol Spence is a great tactician, but he underestimated me when we fought at the Pan American Games in Venezuela as amateurs. I think that he looked down on me for being South American, for being Latin, thinking that I was gonna be as good, but I kicked his butt. Out of both fights that he mentioned, I defeated him more soundly than any other. I made him have 2 counts, 2 protected counts, and he couldn't do anything against me. And then the other fight that you mentioned, it was at the World Series of Boxing in Argentina, and it was also one that I remember fondly. But the Spence one, that's the one I remember the most, because I didn't just beat him, I beat him resoundingly, and that's a fight that I won't forget anytime soon.
That's fascinating. Has Spence changed as a fighter from your perspective?
Sí, yo creo que sí. Yo creo que está más fuerte, está más sólido. Ha cambiado. Es un gran campeón, un gran peleador y realmente sí, se nota. Todos cambiamos, todos mejoramos a medida que va pasando el tiempo. No es lo mismo el amateur que el profesional. Se tiene que afirmar más y cambia todo. Cambia el golpe, cambia el entrenamiento. Realmente sí, cambió y para bien. Lo veo muy fuerte y nada, creo que va a seguir siendo campeón.
Absolutely, I see him at a great level, in great shape. He's a great champion, and I see him continuing to be a champion for a long time to come. I mean, there is no doubt that things changed a lot for both of us if we were amateurs. It's just in the sheer sense of the preparation, the mentality, the way that you approach things as a professional compared to being an amateur, and he has really changed for good. So nothing but good things for him as a professional. The changes that he has made have been really productive and really good.
So Spence has spoken about moving up to 154 pounds. Would you like to welcome him to the division if he does that?
Anhelo ese momento, espero, porque sabes que él dijo que como que le habían robado la pelea conmigo, o que no sé, porque yo vi por ahí que dijo, Castano cheat en mí o algo así, dijo. O chiste, no sé, creo que eso es como que le hicieron trampa, ¿no? Algo así dijo, ¿no?
Sí. You know what, guys? I not only want Spence to come to the 154-pound division. I relish that moment because you know what? After he fought me, he made excuses and he said that Castano cheated me out of the fight, and I'm not gonna stand for that. I want to prove my worth. I relish the moment if he comes up to the 154 pounds.
Love it.
You also had sparring sessions with your countryman Marcos Maidana. What were those sessions like?
Que pega como un caballo el hijo de puta, sí. Realmente yo era amateur, fui a hacerle sparring a Marcos, lo estaba ayudando en pelea contra Kotelny, creo que era por el título. Sí, la verdad que es un gran campeón, un referente para todos los argentinos porque abrió las puertas como Lucas Matisse, Maravilla Martínez, Marcos Maidana, fueron los tres mosqueteros, por así decirlo, ¿no? Los tres que abrieron las puertas acá en Estados Unidos y dejaban a la Argentina bien alto, ¿no? Creo que para mí fue un honor haber esparreado con él y después, ¿no? Lo que hicieron más adelante, ¿no? Que consagraron como lo hicieron.
It was an absolute pleasure, an honor to spar with Maidana. He was one of the three musketeers, along with Sergio Maravilla Martinez and Lucas Matisse, that revived the Argentinian boxing scene that was dead for a long time. They opened the doors to fighting in the United States for people like me once again. But you know what? Sparring with him is not easy. He punches like a fucking son of a bitch. He's hard.
Yeah, we know. We know.
So it was a challenge I welcomed with open arms. It was a pleasure. It was an honor, and I love sparring with him, and I'm always thankful to him, to Martinez, and to Matisse for having paved the way for boxers like me to be successful too.
Fantastic. Just two more questions. We recently saw you paid tribute to the late Diego Maradona. Do you have a favorite? How much did Maradona mean to you? And do you have a favorite football team back home?
Sí. El mejor recuerdo de Maradona fue cuando salió campeón mundial con la selección y en el Nápoles. Toda la temporada que jugó en el Nápoles, en Italia, fue la mejor versión de Diego Armando Maradona. Y después de equipo, soy de equipo favorito River Plate.
So, my favorite Maradona moment is that just remembering winning the World Cup in 1986. That was so surreal, and it wouldn't have happened without him. The goals against England and the way that he carried Argentina to its second World Championship, and then the way that he played for Napoli in Naples and the match he left in Italy. Those are the memories that I carry with me of him, like the way that he was above and beyond anything you could have imagined. My favorite team is River Plate. Between this translator and you guys, hasn't won a domestic title since 2014, so that's beyond that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically, his favorite team is River Plate, and the River Plate actually, when fans are allowed to come into the stadium, they actually invite me over to watch matches, and I go anytime I can to watch either Copa Libertadores matches or the Argentinian tournament matches. I love the team, and I go see them in person whenever I can.
Fantastic. So I wanted to circle back to Saturday night to finish up here. You know, we just mentioned back home, we mentioned Buenos Aires. Do you know how people reacted to your victory on Saturday night?
No, la gente estaba como loca. Realmente en Argentina todos muy contentos, muy felices. Realmente yo no confiaba en la gente que se descargue DAZN. Realmente estaba preocupado porque estaban todos enojados allá en Argentina. Decir, ¿cómo puede ser que no la pasen? Porque siempre peleé por Fox Sports. Entonces, como que no estaban enojados. Decía, ¿por qué? No es gratis. Pero igual, mucha gente se la descargó y la pudo ver y realmente me hicieron el aguante y están muy contentos, tan felices. Están esperando que vaya, todavía no viajé, ya me están mandando cuándo venís ya. Así que nada, me espera un largo camino hasta llegar a mi casa, me parece.
People are so excited for me. In the beginning, they were a little pissed off about the fact that the fight wasn't broadcast on Fox Sports in Argentina like it usually is, but they were able to tune in anyway. That's how great they are as fans, and I can't wait to see them again. I haven't been able to come back yet, but from what they tell me, they're really happy. They're excited for me, and I can't wait to share the love with them when I get back.
Love it. Brian, this has been fantastic. I really enjoy it. We really enjoyed spending time with you, getting to know you, and congratulations again. And we hope we can do this again sometime soon.
Qué grande, muchísimas gracias. Quiero agradecerle a ustedes por este espacio, por pensar en mí para poder hablar un poco y conocerme más. Realmente agradezco a Paco Barcarcel que me dio la oportunidad, a Jaime que también hizo posible esta pelea. Y gracias a ustedes por este espacio y a todo mi equipo de trabajo. Así que Sebastián Contursi principalmente. Así que mil gracias.
No, thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to be here, to talk with you guys. Also, thank you to Al Heyman, to Paco Barcarcel, mostly also Sebastián Contursi. And I am, more than willing to come back anytime you guys want.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. A pleasure.
Adrien Broner, unapologetically brash.
I knocked his ass out.
But talented.
AB is about business.
I love that hate. I don't need no antidote.
Once the bell rings, he's one of the most gifted fighters in the sport.
Hate it or love it, I'm gonna always be AB.
I want it all, what they saying.
I'm still AB, always balling.
All right, it's time for the week in review. And of course, we're going to take a look back at Mr. Castano's big win over Patrick Teixeira. I mean, what many thought was a 50-50 fight going in turned into pure domination. Castano won a wide 12-round unanimous decision, become the new WBO 154-pound champ. Mike, is Brian Castano better than many thought?
I suppose he was a little under the radar, even with strong performances against Michel Soro and Erislandy Lara. I thought he was really good going into this fight, and he just proved it in a big way. I guess this was his breakout performance because this was arguably his highest profile fight, and it was for Teixeira's title. I thought Castano looked just terrific. He's not super quick. He's not super powerful. He just uses his ability and just this off-the-charts fitness to smother his opponents, which is what he did to Teixeira. Teixeira's a good fighter. He tried to keep Castano off of him, but he really just had no prayer in the end. Castano is always in a good position to throw and land his punches, and he just never stops throwing them. He threw this figure just blew me away. I'm not sure I've ever seen this. He threw 927 power shots, according to CompuBox. Think about that. Almost 1,000 power shots. If you throw 1,000 punches in a fight, that's like a lot. So 1,000 power shots is just nuts. That's an average of 77 power punches thrown per round. Wow. You know, just think about that. This guy's a special fighter in his own way.
Yeah, he certainly is. And you mentioned those attributes which are so rare. We're very close to one undisputed champion in the division. Jermell Charlo holds the other 3 belts. Can Brian Castano topple Charlo?
I personally wouldn't pick anyone at 154 to beat Charlo. I think he's I hesitate to use this word, but I will anyway. I think he's a near perfect blend of ability, power, and intensity. He's one intense dude. I'll say this, though. Charlo would have to be at his best because Castano is just going to keep coming and coming as long as he possibly can. And I think Castano is probably a better boxer than people might realize. As I said, he's always in position to do what he does. He's almost always in position to throw his punches. He's always at the right distance. He just seemed like he just did everything just right. The only thing he couldn't do against Teixeira was knock him out, but otherwise it was just really super impressive performance. Again, I just think this guy's special. Here's the thing, though. It takes either a really, really good boxer like approaching the Mayweather level or a really big puncher to slow a guy down like Castano. Charlo's the latter. Charlo is a big, big puncher. I think he could end up hurting Castano, but I'll add that I would love to see this fight.
Yeah, when I think back to the stat you presented that 77 power punches around, I thought to myself, well, that's a lot of countering opportunities for Jermell Charlo. Now, that said, I think it's possible that Castano can topple him. I mean, high punch volume, great stamina. He's got very good boxing skills. The question is, can he handle Charlo's speed and power, which he's probably never encountered as a pro? And Jermell Charlo has a pretty deep bag of tricks, too. He can box. He can move. We saw that in the earlier part of his career, and he boxed against Jason Rosario in his last fight. So there are different facets to his game. It's such a great fight. I mean, such a great style matchup. That's how unification should be. Fights like this, and to me, it's a must-see for 2021. I saw Charlo's tweet prior to the fight Saturday night. He was basically rooting for Castano, said he wants the fight. We heard what Castano just said. So it sounds like both guys want it. Hopefully it happens. Now, also last weekend, Ghana finally came through for me. Richard Comey with the 6-round TKO of Jackson Marinez, dropped him twice that round and basically brutalized him. Mike, what were your thoughts on Comey's performance?
First of all, I now hate the guy because I picked Marinez. No, I don't hate him. Actually, he seems like a really sweet guy. Yeah. First, in reference to what we discussed last week, he didn't show any signs of being gun shy after what happened against Teofimo Lopez. At least I didn't see anything. He looked confident. He attacked his opponent like he always had. He was Richard Comey. And I just thought he looked really good. He just imposed himself physically on Marinez, who ultimately just like wilted under the pressure. Marinez is a good boxer, but he had neither the skills, the experience, or the power necessary to handle what Comey was throwing at him. It evidently takes a special fighter like a Teofimo Lopez to do that. Comey reminded me that he's a good fighter.
He is. I thought he looked a little rusty early on, but once he got going, sheesh. I mean, 30 wins, 27 of them by knockout.
Mm-hmm.
The dude is just a hard-hitting slugger, and you don't want to take too many shots from him. However, I detected the same error when he throws that right hand, dropping his left hand.
Right.
That got him caught against Teofimo Lopez and against Robert Easter, too, in 2016. I don't know if that's ever going to change. I mean, Comey began boxing just a little over 10 years ago. He's 32 now. He'll probably need to shore that up before he faces the bigger names. Speaking of which, who would you like to see Comey fight next?
He's ranked by 2 of the 4 major sanctioning bodies right now, and he could climb into the top 15 of one or both the other 2 after Saturday. He's probably a victory or 2 away from another title shot, I guess. I can see him fighting any top 35 pounder: Javier Fortuna, Jorge Linares, Luke Campbell, Rolando Romero, Vasily Lomachenko, Robert Easter. You mentioned Robert Easter. List goes on and on. Guys like that. I'm not sure he's going to get a shot at Lopez, in the next couple fights, but pretty much anybody else. And I think any of those fights would be a good matchup and fun to watch. Don't underestimate that aspect of Comey. He's really fun to watch, no matter who he's fighting. Yeah.
He is. He truly is fun to watch. I'd like him for Vasily Lomachenko. I don't know who Lomachenko has in mind when he returns, but I just like that fight, the matchup of styles at 135. Devin Haney, who's looking for a test. I also like the Robert Easter rematch at 140 pounds, too. If that ever happens, they had such a great fight their first time around. Now, just a reminder, in our prediction league, I'm 4-1. Mike is 3-2. Still early, but
I'm off to a bad start.
You are. This is how it's going to be. The trend has been set. Just watch the space, folks, and let's see. I bet you'll be a little more hesitant to make certain picks going forward.
It's fun to take risky picks, but yeah, I think it bites you in the ass though. That's the problem.
Yeah, it definitely does. But you got to go with your gut sometimes, and I'll definitely do that this year. So I expect a pretty fun year in the predictions. But again, watch this space, folks.
Adrien Broner, unapologetically brash.
I knocked his ass out.
But talented.
AB is about business.
Smoke. I love that hate. I don't need no antidote.
Once the bell rings, he's one of the most gifted fighters in the sport.
Hate it or love it, I'm gonna always be AB.
Give me the smoke. I want it all, what they saying.
I'm still AB, always balling.
All right, it's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe. This week, we've got a bit of a twist in the spirit, in the honor of Leon Spinks, the late Leon Spinks, part of the Spinks brothers, and also looking ahead to next Saturday, Fox PBC Fight Night, Anthony Durrell, one half of the Durrell brothers. We're going to examine the greatest boxing siblings in the sport's history. We found 10 out of a lot, 5 each. And then at the end, we're going to announce who we think are the greatest brothers in the sport's history. Mike, I was surprised at the number of siblings that there have been who've boxed over the years.
Yeah, this turned into another one of those long research projects. I didn't realize it was going to take this long. I just, in an hour, I found 30 of them. And it wasn't like it was just one guy was good and the other guy just happened to box. It was both guys or more were good boxers. That makes me think there's 50 or 60 if I really dig, which in a way is not really crazy if you think about it, because I think boxing is sort of a family business a lot of the time. It's handed down from grandfather or father to son and sometimes daughters. And so I'm not surprised that siblings sort of feed off each other and become boxers. I was just a little bit amazed that there were so many good ones. Both guys were just really good. That's what sort of jumped out at me. It was hard to choose just, as you know, it was hard to choose just 10.
Yeah, definitely. I was surprised at the number as well. I'm glad we were able to dwindle it down. And why don't you kick things off with your first grouping?
Okay. My first grouping is the Galaxy Brothers. And I'm going to start with a group where I have to apologize if I don't say the names correctly, but it's Kaosai and Kaukor. I'm hoping that I'm close on those first names. They had a combined record of 71-3 with 60 knockouts. They are from Bangkok, Thailand. The Galaxy brothers also are twins, interestingly enough. So we're going to, I'm sure that the Charlo brothers are going to come up later on. The Galaxy brothers peaked in the 1980s, just so you know the time frame. Kaosai, who only lost one time, was the star. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He was known as the Thai Tyson because of his power. He stopped 41 of his 48 opponents. And he made, get this, he made 19 successful defenses of his junior bantamweight title. He's just an all-time great. I was thinking that if he were from the West, I think people would really think more highly of this guy, universally, but he was obviously probably one of the better fighters of all time. Calcor, the brother, was a two-time bantamweight title holder. His best win was over Wilfredo Vasquez, one of the better fighters of that era.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't as good as his brother, but he was good. This pair really deserves a lot of credit for what they accomplished.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't realize that Calcor defeated Wilfredo Vasquez. That's a really, really good win. Obviously, his brother is the way bigger name, and although he wasn't necessarily a superstar, I'd say amongst hardcore boxing fans, he's pretty well known. Now I'm going to kick things off with another clan that's pretty well known, the Mayweathers. Floyd Mayweather Sr., Roger Mayweather, and Jeff Mayweather. Now the Mayweathers' combined record is 119, 29-6 with 62 KOs. I mean, these guys were really good boxers. Roger, obviously the best of the bunch, a 2-division world champion. He won titles at 130, 140. Floyd Sr., a welterweight contender, and Jeff Mayweather, overlooked, but certainly no slouch. He hung tough with a lot of good fighters, even at an advanced age, and he was just a pleasure to watch in terms of his boxing style. So, of course, it comes as no surprise that from this family came Floyd Money Mayweather, not his real middle name, who worked with all three guys at one point or the other.
That's a good choice. It's obvious how good Roger was. He was one of the better fighters in and around his weight class during his career. And Jeff was, like you said, he was a pretty good fighter too. What I think people might not know is that Floyd Sr. was a good boxer. Was a really good boxer. Sugar Ray Leonard, who beat him, has said more than once that this guy was really good. He was fast like his son. And he was good. None of those guys turned out to be like Floyd Jr., of course, but these were good fighters.
Yeah, they certainly were. All right, let's go to the next grouping. I'll kick this one off, and I got one that I think folks will enjoy, the old school hardcore fans. Terry and Orlin Norris. Now, Terry and Orlin collectively had a record of 104 wins, 19 losses, and 1 draw, 61 by knockout. Terry, of course, Hall of Famer, 3-time world champion. He was the man at 154 for a long time. Reminds me of Jermell Charlo, aside from a couple of things, but reminds me of a younger Jermell Charlo. Now, Orlin Norris wasn't too shabby himself, won a world cruiserweight title and was competitive at heavyweight, beat Oliver McCall, an overlooked fighter, but a very good one, and part of a great boxing family.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to see those guys numerous times live. And I'm a little biased when it comes to Terry Norris because he's one of my favorite fighters of all time. Just really fun to watch and just a really good fighter. That's a good comparison, actually, with Jermell. I actually think Jermell has a better chin.
That's
than Terry had. But Terry's skill level combined with his power was like,
and his athleticism.
His athleticism was really. He was a baseball player growing up. He was really impressive. And Orlin, for a guy that size, moved really well. He fought Tyson and tweaked his knee, so we never really saw what he could do in that fight. But yeah, he's a good fighter. I love that combination.
Yeah, let's hear yours.
Okay, so I'm going to reach back pretty far back in history because I feel like I just have to, because these two guys, especially one of them, was just one of the all-time greats. The Gibbons brothers, Mike and Tommy Gibbons. They had a combined record of 121, 7, and 5 with 86 knockouts. Hometown St. Paul, Minnesota. So again, I'm reaching pretty far back for this one. They fought in the 1910s and the 1920s, but boxing historians will tell you how good these guys were. Mike Gibbons was a middleweight. He was, by all accounts, just an absolute boxing wizard and way before his time. I've heard he was so good defensively that he would have made Floyd Mayweather proud. I gave it a quick look, and he had like 10 victories, whether those were official or newspaper decisions over Hall of Famers. He was a great, great boxer. If you read about this guy, you'll hear what people have to say about him. Tommy is best known for his title fight with Jack Dempsey that bankrupted the city of Shelby, Montana. That's one of the great stories in boxing lore. Gibbons lost a decision in that fight, but he was a really good fighter. He beat a lot of the top heavyweights of his day, including some Hall of Famers. He actually had one newspaper decision over Harry Greb, and anybody knows about the history of boxing knows that Harry Greb's sort of like the holy grail.
Boxing hipster king.
Yeah,
just
so people understand, a newspaper decision there was a time when they didn't allow decisions by judges, so the newspaper reporters would decide who won. It wasn't official, but they would say who they thought won the fights. So I don't know how long that went on, but if you look on BoxRec, you'll see
that's wild
designation. Yeah, they didn't allow it, so the boxing writers decided who won. And again, it wasn't official though, because there just was no winner if there was no knockout. Anyway. I'm confusing each other. No, Tommy Gibbons also evidently had big time power. 48 of his 56 victories came by knockout. I was just thinking, I'm sure that nobody messed with the Gibbons brothers back in the day.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, I never heard of them until you mentioned them. So that's quite a story. My next pairing are guys you guys have definitely heard of if you're boxing fans today. The dynamic duo, Robert and Mikey Garcia. Their record together, 74-4 with 55 knockouts. Robert held the world title at 130 pounds, which he ultimately lost to the great Diego Corrales. Had a pretty short career. Mikey, a future Hall of Famer, no doubt, a 4-division champion, a former unified champion who might still add on to his accolades before it's all said and done. And Mike, you can't discuss the Garcia brothers without paying homage to their father, Eduardo Garcia.
Yeah, once again, I was fortunate to have been there when Robert was fighting. I was mainly focused on Fernando Vargas, who fought out of the same gym. Eduardo was his trainer. But I was there for Rob. I was there when Robert won his title and for a lot of his fights. Very, very good fighter. Not as good as Mikey. Mikey, I think you just said he's probably bound for the Hall of Fame. But as far as a 1-2 punch, really good. I mean, just look at the record. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's a great record. Two great fighters. I remember Robert Garcia. I mean, excellent fighter, and great to see him as a trainer today. Pretty good at that job too.
Hall of Famer, Hall of Fame trainer for sure.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Next, I have the Canizales brothers, Orlando and Gabby Canizales. Combined record 98. 13-2 with 73 knockouts. All these records are just nuts, aren't they? Yeah. Hometown Laredo, Texas. These guys are the pride of Laredo. The Canizaleses fought in the 1980s and 1990s to give it a time frame. Orlando is in the Hall of Fame. He was a superb boxer, also had power, which made him very, very difficult to beat. He defended his bantamweight title, division record, 16 times. That's how dominating this guy was. He beat guys like Kelvin Seabrooks, Paul Gonzalez, Bones Adams, the top guys at that weight during that era. Yeah. Gabby was a 2-time bantamweight title holder with victories over Seabrooks, Richie Sandoval. He actually retired Richie Sandoval. That was a brutal fight. And other good fighters at that time. The Canizales brothers weren't necessarily like spectacular fighters, but they were remarkably consistent, as their combined record indicates.
Yeah, very, very good fighters. And at one point, Orlando, I believe, was a pound for pounder for several years. So certainly considered elite. Now, the next two on my list are the only twins that I have on the list. Smack dab in their primes and wearing titles today. Jermell and Jermell Charlo, their record together, 65-1, 40 knockouts. Both guys rank among the world's best, number one in their respective divisions. Jermell, a 2-division champion, undefeated, and the current WBC middleweight king. Jermell holds 3 titles at 154. He's on the verge of becoming the undisputed champ and being considered one of the greatest super welterweights ever. Mike, these guys could be considered the greatest boxing brothers when it's all said and done.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, we can't predict what's going to happen in the future, but what they've done so far and their abilities and the direction they appear to be going, just stand by because they're just getting rolling, in my opinion. I've sort of become a little bit biased with these two because in just one sense, in the sense that they're now two of my favorite fighters. I mean, I just love watching these guys fight. So their combination of their ability and how much fun they are to watch, these guys are just stars.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you've got a couple more, right? Who's next on your list?
Okay, so we already mentioned them. We're sort of dedicating this to them, the Spinks brothers, Leon and Michael Spinks. Combined record 57, 18, and 3, 35 knockouts. Now, most of those losses came toward the end of Leon's career. Hometown St. Louis, Missouri. Here's the background. First of all, they both won gold medals at the 1976 Olympics. So that right there is impressive, right? Then as far as Michael goes, I think a lot of people might forget that he was one of the greatest light heavyweights of all time.
Sure.
He never lost at that weight. And reigned for 4 years as champion. And he beat some really, really good 175 pounders. This was almost like a golden era of light heavyweights. He beat Marvin Johnson, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, and Dwight Muhammad Qawi, among other top guys. So he didn't have an easy run, and he was undefeated. Nobody ever beat him. Then he moves up to heavyweight and hands Larry Holmes the first loss in his career to win the heavyweight title, and he also wins the rematch. I think Michael's reputation took a little bit of a hit when he lost to Tyson in 91 seconds, wasn't it? But his resume is just really, truly remarkable. Meanwhile, as we know, everybody's been writing and talking about, Leon made history by upsetting Muhammad Ali to win the heavyweight title in his 8th fight, which is just another great story in boxing lore. Now, he lost the rematch and never really did that much after that. But he and Michael were, bottom line, he and Michael were the first brother pair to win the heavyweight championship. It's hard to top the Spinks brothers.
Yeah, you list all those accomplishments. I mean, it's just staggering. One beat Muhammad Ali and Michael Spinks, the Spinks jinx. Absolutely, what happened in the Tyson fight has led people to forget everything that he accomplished before that and how he got there. I mean, what other light heavyweight who could dare step in the ring with Mike Tyson? So I think they have a pretty strong case for being the greatest brothers in boxing history. Now, last on my list are the heavyweight kings, Vitaly and Vladimir Klitschko. Their combined record, 109-7 with 94 knockouts. You talk about power. That right there is really impressive. Both guys had long heavyweight reigns, but really the question we all discuss, obviously, is who is the better Klitschko?
Well, we talked about this before, and we disagree. Listen, they're essentially equal in my opinion, but I always gave the nod to Vitaly. Maybe I just like to be a contrarian. I don't know. But I just think that he was the tougher, more durable guy. The only reason, I think he lost twice, right? And the only reason he lost was because he got injured in both fights. Otherwise, he would have been undefeated. Then we wouldn't even be having this conversation if he'd never lost. And he did what he did in his career, battling through injuries. Remember, he came back from like a 4-year hiatus. But Vlad was for what his size and his athleticism, that right hand. They were both so good.
Yeah, they really were. Although I take exception to his 2 losses were to injuries. His second loss was due to right hands by Lennox Lewis that busted his face open.
Yeah, I know. It depends how you look at that. But
yeah, I mean, yeah. So we got to give that to Lennox. Personally, I mean, I think head to head, Vitaly probably beats Vladimir. Maybe
really, you think that?
More, yeah, I do. I think he just he took a shot better. And got down into the trenches. He seemed a little tougher in the trenches. So I picked Vitaly to beat him head to head. I just think Vladimir is more accomplished.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And so that's probably where I rate Vladimir ahead of him is based on his resume. All right, who's your last?
Just to clarify,
Not
then,
the
but
least.
I think it's the way we look at the Klitschkos then, because I want to know who would win the fight. That means he's the better fighter.
But they never fought.
But you're like they wouldn't, yeah. But
right.
But anyway, it kind of depends how you look at it. Anyway, my last one is the today's boxing fans will be familiar with them. The Marquez brothers, Juan Manuel and Rafael. Combined record 97-16-1 with 77 knockouts. Hometown Mexico City. Juanma is a Hall of Famer now. He fought Manny Pacquiao essentially on even terms 4 times, which is really something when you stop and think about that. Think about how people look at Pacquiao, and 4 times Marquez basically fought him on even keel, and the last one actually blew Pacquiao out. I don't have to explain to our listeners, but he was just a brilliant, tough boxer who fought at the highest level for around 15 years. Juanma is, in my opinion, he's an all-time great. Now, Rafael isn't in the Hall of Fame, but he arguably should be. He was a good boxer and a big puncher. Pound for pound, he was a better puncher than his brother. He was a 2-division title holder, had this classic 4-fight series with Israel Vasquez. He beat Hall of Famer Mark Johnson twice, which I think really stands out to me. And he had a lot of other good victories. It's just, bottom line, it's tough to beat the Marquez brothers.
Yeah, one victory that Rafael Marquez had that I thought was brilliant was his fight against Timmy Austin.
Yeah, that too.
Where Austin was a really, really good fighter, and it was a great fight back and forth, and how he stopped Austin was extremely impressive to me. I mean, what can you say about Juan Manuel, though? What a fighter this guy was through how many divisions, God knows. Great chin, great power, great boxing skills. I mean, everything you could want in a boxer, these two had. You could make a great case that these are the best boxing brothers ever. Who is your pick for best boxing brothers ever? Would it be the Marquez brothers?
Yeah, honestly, this was hard. I could have made arguments, I think, for 3 or 4 sets. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Marquezes. I think the Klitschko's are neck and neck with them. But the Mexicans faced much, much better opposition than the Klitschko's did, in my opinion. And that makes them number 1 in my eyes. And I think, and as we said earlier, I think the Charlos are still a work in progress. They definitely have a chance to end up number 1 on my list. For now, though, for me, it's the Marquezes. I've been around boxing for 30 years, something like that, or almost 30 years. And Juanma is among the best handful of fighters I've ever seen. And Rafael was really, really good. I personally think he belongs in the Hall of Fame, and he might get there one day. In my opinion, best brother combination, Marquezes.
You know, I'm inclined to agree with you. I give them the edge over the Klitschko's because of their opposition, because of their many accomplishments. But I'm thinking a year from now, if Jermell Charlo is the undisputed 154-pound champion, and let's say Jermall becomes a 3-division champion, then we're probably looking at the greatest boxing brothers in history. But we'll see a lot more in the future that we're going to find out. So we'll see what happens. Now, that's going to do it for today's episode. Don't forget, Saturday night, the return of Adrien Broner on Showtime Championship Boxing. A triple header beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to the PBC Podcast wherever you found us. For myself and Mike, we want to thank Brian Castano for stopping by, and we want to thank you, as always, for listening. We'll be back next week for more boxing talk right here on the PBC Podcast.